I wonder how many of us have ever had an emergency or unexpected expenses that came up and we didn't have the money to cover it. Ever had that happen? That's not a good feeling, is it? Have you ever had an emergency or unexpected expenses to come and you had the savings to cover it? Now that's still not a good feeling because whatever it is, you're taking that out of savings. But did anybody ever had that happen? You were able to cover the unexpected costs of that? Which way feels better? Yeah, when you can cover it. And today we want to talk about savings a little bit, and not just from a human perspective, but from God's Word. Last week I mentioned in the message Joseph from the Old Testament and the story of Joseph and how he was sold by his brothers into slavery. And he was a model slave, and he served his master well, and he rose to leadership and responsibility over everything in the home. And then he was tempted by Potiphar, his master's wife, and she falsely accused him and said things that were not true. And Potiphar had him thrown in jail. And he went to jail, and while he was in prison, he was a model prisoner, and the jailer put him over all the responsibilities of the other prisoners there. And after a while, there were two people who had worked for the Pharaoh, and they had dreams, and Joseph interpreted their dreams, and both of them were going to be released from prison. The baker was going to have his head removed, and the butler was going to go back in service. And I can understand that. I mean, it's nice to have somebody that takes care of you. And so if they mess up, maybe you can be forgiven. But if you mess up somebody's food, especially the Pharaoh, you're just not going to get forgiven, right? So the baker's head came off. But Joseph said to the butler before he left the prison, he said, "When you get into Pharaoh's prison, remember me." And that didn't work out so well for Joseph because the butler forgot. Until the Pharaoh had two dreams. And he had all his wise men and magicians and all the people that were supposed to be able to take care of these things for the king. He asked all of them, and there was not one person in all of Egypt that could answer the question for him. And then the butler remembered, oh yeah, there's this guy named Joseph down in prison. And he interpreted a dream for the baker and for me. And both of those interpretations came out to be true. And so the Pharaoh summoned for Joseph to come from the prison, to stand before him. And Pharaoh told him the dreams, and Joseph interpreted the dreams for him. And we want to pick up at that point then in the sermon this morning entitled Savings for Harvest and Famine. And you can find this in Genesis chapter 41. If you keep your Bibles open there, we're going to be looking at a variety of verses. In Genesis 41, it's too much to read this morning, but we'll be looking at various verses throughout Genesis 41 this morning. And in this passage, we're going to see three things about saving. First of all, saving money is absolutely necessary. Secondly, saving money is a decision. And third, saving money protects your family and those around you. So the first thing that we want to notice is that saving money is an absolute necessity. Now, in the time of Joseph, Egypt was the richest land, the richest nation in all of the land. It had the most fertile fields and was the most fertile area in the world, and a very, very prosperous economy. And Pharaoh was the absolute monarch of Egypt. He held total control over both the land and the people. They looked at him as being God. He had total control and say over his people. His word was law. And God's interaction with Pharaoh was very interesting. Pharaoh had all the power over the land, but his encounter with God left him scratching his head. He was forced to ask someone else with the answer. He had these two dreams, but he couldn't figure out what was going on. Now just think for a moment about the three people that we read about in this story. You have God, who is truly the God, the creator, the supreme being of all the universe. He holds all the cards. He has all the power. You have Pharaoh in one little section of the world. Yes, it was a very prosperous section, but in one little section of the world that the people there thought he was God. Now, he wasn't God, but they thought he was God, and he thought he was God. And then you have Joseph, who was a prisoner, a slave prisoner, a foreigner who was brought in as a slave and then imprisoned. Now that's quite a mix. And God got Pharaoh's attention through these dreams. He let Pharaoh know who really was in charge. And Joseph, who by all rights and means humanly should not have had the right to even stand in the presence of the Pharaoh, and he's the one who is declaring that God is in control. You know, sometimes we think we have things all figured out, and we think we know who has power and who doesn't have power, and who can do what, and how, and how it's all going to work out. The reality is, as you read the Bible and as you live the Christian life, you realize we don't have it figured out. About the time we think we know what God is going to do, he does something different. You know, and God uses people that we don't expect to use. Back in the middle of the 20th century, nobody expected a farm boy from North Carolina would become the greatest evangelist of the 20th century, Billy Graham. Billy Graham didn't expect that, but God did. And so, no matter who we are, no matter how much power or influence or finances or other things that we have, or how little of those things we have, we don't know who God is going to use and how he's going to use them. In Genesis 41:28, it said, this is Joseph speaking, "It is just as I said to Pharaoh. God has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do." And in verse 32 of Genesis 41, it says, "The reason the dream was given to Pharaoh in two forms is that the matter has been firmly decided by God, and God will do it." I mean, here is Joseph, just not even released from prison. He was just brought up from prison. The expectation was after he talked to Pharaoh, he was going back. He was from another country. He had been a slave and then a prisoner. And he stands before God, or before the Pharaoh, and he says, "I just want you to know the reason that God repeated this in two different ways is because it's firmly established. It is going to happen." It's amazing. We see that God gave Pharaoh a clear message. This was kind of the shot over the bow of the ship. This was the warning shot. This is letting him know in advance. I mean, God could have given them the 7 years of plenty that are going to come and the 7 years of famine. God could have done that without any warning, but he didn't. He gave Pharaoh the warning. And Joseph was able to see clearly that this had been firmly decided by God. And when the Word tells you that something has been firmly decided by God, you need to buckle up, because it is going to happen. Pharaoh recognized the urgency, and he took steps to manage the impending crisis. He was wise enough not to say, "Oh, I'm Pharaoh, I'm in charge, I'm like God, and this isn't going to happen." No, he said, "How are we going to take care of this?" And the fact of the matter is, emergencies are not a matter of if, they are a matter of when. You see, everything was going well for Pharaoh, and there were 7 more years that things were going to go well. It's easy for us. I mentioned last week, we live in the most influential and the most prosperous times that's ever been in the world. In history and anywhere in the world, we are living in the most prosperous place at the most prosperous time ever. And yet, God warned that this was going to happen. In the Money magazine, it reports that 78% of us will have a major negative financial event in any 10-year period of time. And so it's important for us to prepare, because for the sake of our families, if 80% of the people in this room are going to have an emergency in the next 10 years, doesn't it make sense to have a plan? That's what Joseph said to Pharaoh. This is going to happen. You're going to have some prosperity. You're going to have some good years. But an emergency is going to come. Bad times are going to come. And so he said that you need to be prepared. The second thing that we notice from this passage is that saving money is a decision. It's a choice. We can live in the most prosperous place in the world, in the most prosperous time in the world, and just blow right through it. And just use up everything that we have and look for more. That's what most of us do. That's what a credit card is many times. We've blown everything that we have, so we put more on the credit card so we can have more than what we have. And Joseph didn't just tell Pharaoh that trouble was coming. He interpreted the dreams that he was asked to, but he went a step further. He offered a specific plan of action. I want to read this section to you from Genesis 41, beginning in verse 33 and reading through verse 40. It says, "And now that Pharaoh looked for a discerning and wise man and put him in charge of the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh appoint commissioners over the land to take a fifth of the harvest of Egypt during the 7 years of abundance. They should collect all the food of these good years that are coming and store up the grain under the authority of Pharaoh to be kept in the cities for food. This food should be held in reserve for the country to be used during the 7 lean years of famine that will come upon Egypt, so that the country may not be ruined by the famine." The plan seemed good to Pharaoh and to all his officials. So Pharaoh asked them, "Can we find anyone like this man, one in whom is the Spirit of God?" Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Since God has made all this known to you, there is no one so discerning and wise as you. You shall be in charge of my palace, and all my people are to submit to your orders. Only with respect to the throne will I be greater than you." Isn't that absolutely amazing? God humbled the man who thought he was God. And God raised up the man who was a foreigner, sold into slavery, and came fresh from the prison into the Pharaoh's presence. And when faced with the realization that Egypt would flourish for 7 years and then face famine for 7 years, Joseph's first instinct was to save. He told them in each of the 7 years of the prosperous time that they were to set aside 20% of all the harvest. And they were to do that year after year for 7 years. And then they would have what they would need for the time of an emergency. And Joseph further suggested that someone be put in charge of this to make sure it happens. I mean, Joseph wasn't just making a suggestion. He was telling probably the most powerful person on earth, you need to put somebody in charge of this. That'd be like walking into the White House today and telling the President of the United States, this is what you need to do. And yet he did. Right straight out of prison, he went and told him what to do. His plan left nothing to chance, and it was written down and had the full support of Pharaoh. And in our personal lives, our personal budgets need to be intentional and well planned. We need to have a plan for how we're going to use our money. We may look at the world and we see billionaires And we see trillion-dollar businesses, and we see ball players making millions of dollars, and we think, oh, I don't have much. But if you look anywhere else in the world, and you look back through history, we have more than anybody else. Are we going to live in this time and go through all the things that God puts in our hands and not have a plan for how we're going to use it? We need to write it down. The budget is not a straitjacket. If you want to have some fun in life, that's great. Have some fun. Have a fun item in your budget and use that to have fun. It just means that you're sacrificing, that you are exercising control over it. Joseph's savings plan teaches us three important things. Time matters. Decisions made in abundance will feed you in scarcity. Those of you who said, yes, I had an emergency or I had unexpected financial difficulty, but I had money saved to cover it. That's what Joseph is doing. That's what he's telling us. The emergency savings should be kept totally separate. Larry Burkett, another person who gave financial advice, he's no longer with us, but he said a budget is simply telling your money what to do instead of wondering where it went. So please don't raise your hand in this. Have you ever had that happen where you got to the end of the month and you say, where did the money go? You look at your paycheck and you think, especially if you're older. I mean, I remember back times when people didn't make the kind of money that people make today. And you look at your paycheck and you get to the end of the month and it didn't cover it. And you say, where did all that money go? How did that possibly happen? But that's where a budget comes in. You tell your money where to go and what to do rather than it controlling you and telling you. And then the third thing that we want to notice is that saving money protects your family and those around you. Disciplined savings add up quickly. In Genesis 41, verses 48 and 49, it says, Joseph collected all the food produced in those 7 years of abundance in Egypt and stored it in cities. In each city, he put the food grown in the fields surrounding it. Joseph stored up huge quantities of grain like the sand of the sea. It was so much that he stopped keeping records because it was beyond measure. Now just stop for a moment and think about what this is saying. Joseph said, save 20% of what comes in the prosperous year. Okay? So it would take 5 of those 7 years just to equal 1 year of income. And then there were 2 more years that would be 40 more percent that came in. And yet, when the 7 years of famine came, there was enough out of just over 1 year's worth of storage. They had enough to live on and share with other nations for 7 full years. How could that happen? Well, it's called when God is involved. God works and God multiplies. The storehouse was completely full. They couldn't even measure all they had. The result was persistent saving. Egypt became a source of hope and help for the hurting, not only in their own country, but other nations came and received from them. In Genesis 41:55, it says, when all Egypt began to feel the famine, the people cried to Pharaoh for food. Then Pharaoh told all the Egyptians, go to Joseph and do what he tells you. The nation not only survived this catastrophe, but because of wise planning and careful saving, were able to help others. By being faithful during the years of plenty, Joseph was able to bless an entire nation and others around them, literally keeping them alive during the famine. Saving money puts you in a position to help others. John Wesley, who is credited with being the founder of the whole Wesleyan and Methodist movement, he never intended to start a denomination, but he started a movement that became the Methodist churches, the Wesleyan churches. He was our founder, and he said this: earn all you can, save all you can, give all you can. Okay? That's the plan. Earn all you can. God gave you abilities. He gave you mental capacities, education, energy, health. Earn all you can. There's nothing wrong with earning money. It's the exchange that we have with one another to purchase things. But then out of that, you are to save all you can. You're not to spend all that you get. You are to save all you can, and then give all you can. And what does that mean? Well, have you ever had an appeal for something that you really believed in? Maybe it was the church, maybe it was an emergency that came up and you really had a heart, or maybe you had a certain disease or a loved one had a disease and you get this letter in the mail asking for contributions and you're thinking, oh, I wish I could give. Or I wish I could give more. But you're limited because you don't have anything saved back. And so if we earn all we can and save all we can, then we will be able to give all we can. Larry Burkett put it this way: the only difference in saving and hoarding is attitude. The Bible doesn't promote us hoarding. Hoarding is saying, I'm going to make all I can and save all I can and enjoy it all. It's all for me. And I'm just going to hoard this away for me. But God's plan is not only do we work and save, but we use what we earn and what we save for the benefit of other people as well. What would it be like to have the freedom to give generously? What could God do in this world today if every Christian would honor God's word in saving, in giving, tithing, and giving generously? What would the church be able to accomplish in the world? Missionaries that could be sent. There are people today, especially with the educational ones and the price of education. There are a lot of people who say, I would love to be a missionary, but I can't afford to go. I'd love to plant a church, but I can't afford to go. I'd love to be a pastor of a small church, but I can't afford to do it because of the debt load that they have. What would it be like to have freedom to give generously? As I think about that this morning, and as we're talking about saving, the greatest saving that can take place is our own salvation in Jesus Christ. God invested in us to save us. God did not want anyone to perish, but all to come to repentance. And the greatest thing that you can save this morning, if you don't know Jesus as your Savior, is to save your own soul. Not that you can do it, but that you would turn your life over to Jesus, that you would confess that you are a sinner, and repent of your sin, turn away from your sin, turn to God, and ask for repentance, and ask for forgiveness of your sin, and make a decision to follow Jesus. I'm not finished with the message yet. We're going to take another turn from here, but I want us to just pause right now and just give opportunity for anyone here today to receive Jesus as their Savior if you've never received Him as your Savior. Pray this prayer with me if you would. In your heart, you don't have to say it out loud, but just pray this prayer if you want to become a follower of Jesus Christ. Dear Jesus, I confess that I'm a sinner. I was born in sin, and I've committed acts of sin. I've lived in rebellion against you, but today I repent. I turn around, I change my mind, I change my direction. I turn from my sin and I turn to you. And I ask Jesus to forgive my sin and to restore my relationship with God, my Father. And I make a decision today to become a follower of Jesus Christ. Because He has forgiven my sins, I want to live for Him and to serve Him. Lord, I pray that you would answer this prayer in the heart of each person who prayed. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. morning, if you would take the connection card that came in your worship folder, put your contact information on there, and then check the box that said, I made a decision to follow Jesus today. Take it right out through these doors after the service is over, and take it to the guest services desk, and give them that card. We want to follow up with you. What this church is all about is advancing the gospel and making disciples for Jesus. We want to walk beside you. We want to help you to grow and to learn about Jesus. As we continue to think about savings and giving and generosity, many of you have probably heard about or read about or seen on television news this week the great emergency that took place in the Republic of Mozambique. It hit the city of Beira, and when I put these notes in on Thursday, it was at 200 deaths. So on Friday or Saturday, it's over 500 deaths, and the death rate is climbing. I don't know exactly how many people at this point the bodies have been discovered. But the Wesleyan Church that we are a part of is greatly involved in Mozambique. We support the missionaries, Jim and Karen Pickett, and the Bible college that's there in Mozambique. And we want to be able to help to respond to this. Our General Superintendent activated the Wesleyan Emergency Relief Fund so that we can respond to this historically worst cyclone to ever hit Mozambique. Now, a cyclone is just a hurricane in the southern hemisphere, and so they were hit directly by this. According to the Red Cross, Cyclone Idai destroyed 90% of Beira, Mozambique. 90% of the city. They're about a day's drive from Chai Chai, where our Bible college and missionary is doing the picket spot. So the pickets are fine, the Bible college is fine. I kind of thought of the example last fall when a hurricane was coming through North Carolina, where my son and his family lived. We were very concerned, but it's a 10-hour drive down there. We weren't in danger, but we were concerned about our family. In the same way, this city is about a day's drive from where the pickets are, but yet they're very concerned. Some of the students there have family members that were lost as well. 90% of the city was destroyed. All of the Wesleyan churches in that city were destroyed. Pastor Domingos Patricio reports with tears that his church, which was one of the largest Wesleyan churches in the country, is completely gone. Nothing but sand remains. It was also reported that due to the heavy rains, a dam has collapsed, closing the one remaining road in and out of the city. And so we've prepared an envelope for you to use this morning, and we'll have it available again next week. We want to get this to them as quickly as we can, but you didn't have notice this morning, and you might be able to do more if you have a week to prepare for it. But we would like you to use this envelope. Just put your name on it and the amount, and anything that's in this envelope, cash, check, whatever you put in this envelope, will be sent to the Wesleyan Emergency Fund on behalf of the emergency in Mozambique. So we would like you to use that. You can just place it in the giving boxes near both of the exits where you place your communication card, connection card, and your tithes and offerings. You can place that right in there, and we'll make sure that it goes. And again, these will be available next week. You can give it again next Sunday after you've thought about it, prayed about it, and prepared to do that. But you can put this in today if you're prepared, or next Sunday, and it will go directly to the Wesleyan Emergency Fund. So please keep that in mind. But how this all relates, it's amazing. This sermon was planned months ago. This emergency just happened. The General Superintendent just put out an emergency call on Thursday, and all of it comes together. You know, we can give more if we prepare. And if we take all that we earn, and from that, in the good times, in the prosperous times, and be saved, we'll have money to help in times of our own personal emergency, as well as being able to be generous and give others. And I trust that God will help us to use these principles, not just financial planning, not just financial advice, but principles that come directly out of God's Word to help us to be able to respond to the needs that people have. Let's pray. Lord, we thank you this morning for your goodness and grace to us. Lord, we think of the people there in Mozambique. I've never been to Mozambique, but I've been in Zambia. And I can just envision many of those buildings, the mud huts, the grass roofs, and the flooding water, and the downpours, and hurricane-force winds. And when we talk about being destroyed, not just damaged, but people's homes literally being washed away. The description of the pastor who says, all that's left of my church is sand. Lord, you have blessed us. We may not be wealthy by today's standards, but we have more opportunities and more material blessings than any generation of people in the history of the world, than any other place in the world. Help us, Lord, to follow your principles of working hard, using the gifts and the talents and the abilities and the energy and the health that you give to us, that we would be able to earn money, that we would live on what you've given us, and out of that we would save, so that we can meet our own emergencies and give and help others. Help us to honor you in our finances. And Lord, as we as a church want to advance the gospel and make disciples for Jesus, as we give ourselves to the work of this church, there's more that can be accomplished if we are all obedient to God's word. Help us, Lord, to be a blessing. We're not a big church. We're just a postage-sized piece of property here on this corner. But Lord, I pray that you would help us from this little postage stamp piece of property, that you would help us to be able to make a difference in the whole world, in our community, in our nation, and around the world. Bless your people as they give today in supporting the work of this church, in support of outreach. We pray for people that are going through emergency times themselves. We pray your blessing and your help upon them. And Lord, help us to be a church that honors and glorifies you, not only with our words, not only in our songs, but in the way that we are stewards over what you give to us. And we'll give you praise and honor and glory